This happened 2 months ago. I lived in a 2-room apartment space in a subdivision village. The previous owner of the space is a personal friend of mine who was out during one of his business travels. Also because his lease was up and he was planning to move anyway. During the last month of his contract of the apartment, he let me stay and be the caretaker of the space because he still had important stuff like papers and files in it. And I was looking for a place to stay in the area because of my job. Nothing really happened in the first week. The other tenants were nice. I talked with them and we met on the way out when I was hanging laundry. I even made a connection with the girl I liked. 2 rooms are mine, so I felt fine and safe. My friend, by the way, had 3 CCTV cameras installed, each one pointing in a specific direction. One facing the gate and the recreation room where the tenants can sit or smoke or chill or whatever. Another facing the outside door of my apartment rooms. And the last one facing the side of the building because there is a back door and my room was on this side of the building too. During breakfast, I would play some of the footage because there wasn't any TVs in my room. One day I played the footage as I was eating my breakfast. Nothing out of the ordinary, just a couple of stray cats and some of them tenants going in and out of the back door during late hours. I forwarded a bit and on 3 a.m., some person came in and stopped. He just suddenly stopped and stood there in the middle of the walkway. This woke me up pretty hard as I watched because I'm not really a morning person. I forwarded a bit to see if he was just a drunk or high who might have entered the wrong building or if he was planning to rob or case the place, but he didn't do anything. He just stood there for almost an hour. Then I realized he was standing just outside my room window. The blinds were open at the time because it was hot, so this guy was watching me while I slept. I got scared watching this because I was alone at that time. When my friend came back, he was shocked when he saw the footage. I also told the landlord and they called some police to do investigating. They never found the guy, and the police said he didn't do anything wrong. Trespassing, but nothing major. Still, this incident makes me very uneasy every time I sleep at night. By the end of the month, my friend's lease was up and I moved to another apartment that I share, thankfully, with another friend of mine. This one is more secure because it has 2 guard dogs. Until now, I am still very paranoid when I sleep in a room with a window in it. Some dude who was watching me sleep through my window at 3 a.m. in the morning? Let's never meet again. I was 12 the night my father tried to kill us all. It was the single worst and most influential night of my life. I'm 24 now, and I still live with the effects of this one night today. When someone who is supposed to protect you and care for you turns into one of the things you should be most afraid of, it's pretty traumatic. You never fully get over that, and you never truly trust anyone ever again. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I have a younger sister who was 8 at the time of the incident, and my brother, who was the youngest, he was 6. For years, we lived in a relatively rural area. We weren't too far from a bigger city, but we couldn't see our nearest neighbors from our house, and we had plenty of space to play. These were happy times. My dad worked from home for one of those countless companies that started up during the big .com boom in the 90s, and made a good bit of money. That all ended with a crash in the early 2000s. My father lost his job, and we were forced to sell our house and move out to a less expensive place in the city while he looked for work. The house must have been glorious in its day. It was 3 stories and very spacious. It even had 2 staircases going upstairs, a main one in the front and a smaller one in the kitchen. Sadly, the house hadn't been kept up and was not in a great shape anymore. It was also not in the best neighborhood. It wasn't exactly a ghetto, but it was definitely run down. That's how we managed to get it for the price we could afford. I remember being excited at the time because even as a little girl, I was always interested in ghosts and monsters, and it seemed like we were moving into a haunted house. I wish this story were a ghost story about the house, but sadly, as they say, the living are more terrifying. During this time, my dad changed from the loving father we had always known to someone completely different. Someone we were very much all afraid of. He struggled to find any stable work and began drinking and would get very violent and abusive. Most of the time, it was over money. He could drink away every last cent, but how dare my mother buy food or an occasional toy for us? His rage was usually directed at my mom, but if any of us kids dared to draw his attention during one of his rampages, he was always more than willing to turn on us and share the love. As the oldest, I was very protective of my younger siblings, so I would usually round them up and quietly head across the street to a small park whenever my dad would start. That way, we were safer. If we didn't make him angry, he would leave us alone. Usually we would head back around dark and he would be in bed passed out by then. However, one night he was in a particularly foul mood. The yelling was worse than ever. I even heard him from the playground across the street a few times. When darkness rolled around several hours later, we headed home. I could still hear him yelling at my mom from inside. Then I heard my mother scream in pain and fear and the sound of breaking glass. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was worse than usual. I told my brother and sister to go to the neighbors and get help, but my sister was terrified, in a panic, and wouldn't leave my side. So my 6-year-old brother ran next door, alone, while we cautiously approached the house. When we got inside, my mom was laying in the middle of the living room floor, bleeding, and the furniture in the room was overturned and the glass coffee table was shattered all over the floor. When she saw us, a look of terror came into her eyes and she gasped, "Run!" But it was too late. My dad heard us coming in and hidden behind the front door, which he slammed shut and stepped in front of. In his hand was a large kitchen knife, which was covered in my mother's blood. His eyes were filled with rage. We did the only thing we could and ran into the kitchen for the back door, but he was fast enough to cut us off before we could get outside. He flipped over the kitchen table in front of the door and screamed, "Where do you think you're going?" We scrambled into the back staircase and I slammed the door, separating it from the kitchen, and locked it. We were far from safe. There was nowhere for us to go but upstairs. My father beat on the door for several seconds and then stormed off towards the main staircase. I quietly opened the door and pulled my sister toward the basement instead of going up. Downstairs, we had a playroom and a small living room. I slid the love seat out of the wall enough for my sister to get behind it and lay down, and then pushed it back as close to the wall as I could without crushing her. I did the same thing for myself with the couch. We laid there in terror for what felt like hours. I could hear my father almost shaking the house in his rage upstairs, looking for us. It sounded like he was flipping furniture and breaking down doors. Eventually, he figured out that we weren't up there and did the same thing on the level above us. Finally, I heard him coming down to the basement, and I cried silently in terror. Just as I could see his feet on the final stair, there was a crash upstairs and lots of footsteps rushing down into my house. My dad retreated into the dark corner of the basement until eventually the police worked their way downstairs and arrested him. Even after they took him away, I was still too scared to move. They eventually found us and took us upstairs, where my mother was being treated by EMTs and loaded into an ambulance. She survived, although I believe he would have killed her if we hadn't come at that moment. We've never seen my father since that night. He wrote from prison a few times, but my mother never let us read the letters. She did tell us that he did say he was sorry, but that's all she would say. We never went to visit him and moved across the country shortly after. He's still locked up as far as I know. As you can imagine, the entire family spent years in counseling after that night. My younger sister has attempted suicide twice, and I still have nightmares and trust issues to this day. I don't think any of us will completely get over it. This happened a couple months ago, and let me start by giving a little bit of context to this. The day this happened, there was a shooting at the park near my house. The suspect hadn't been caught yet, and the police didn't release a description of who they were looking for. This made it extra creepy. I had just finished up at the gym and was heading to my aunt's to pick up my daughters. They were 4 years old and 6 months old at the time. Driving down the main street, I saw two guys walking with backpacks. We made awkward eye contact and I continued on to my aunt's street. I made small talk with my aunt for a few minutes, then she left to go run an errand. I said goodbye to my cousin and headed out a few minutes later. My aunt had already driven off. When I got down the stairs and was crossing the parking lot to my car, I saw the two guys again, walking on the sidewalk past my aunt's complex. Again, we made eye contact and I hurried to my car with my girls. Let me just say here that I'm a very paranoid person, so I got a very weird vibe, and as I was putting the girls into the car, I went over every possible scenario that could happen in my head, and how I would handle it. Of course, everything went smoothly. The guys didn't try to attack me or anything, and I got in the car and pulled out of the apartment complex. Right as I turned out, I saw a cute dog running around, and I was contemplating whether I should try to save it, when a car pulled out and stopped directly in front of me. I slammed on my brakes to avoid T-boning this vehicle, turned to check on my daughters, and when I looked back, there were 2 cops outside of the car, guns drawn, shouting at the backpack guys to get on the ground. I was trying to piece together what was happening and trying to figure out how to get around the cop car when I looked around and realized that I was surrounded by cop cars. Police were hopping out and all running towards these guys. Not even one of them glanced at me. When it looked like things were calming down, I maneuvered my way around the police car and raced home. Of course, I originally assumed that they were involved in the shooting, and I waited for it to pop up on the news somewhere, but it never did. Later the shooter was caught, and it wasn't either of them, and I never figured out who they were or why so many cops were after them. Even though they never attempted to harm me, the experience was very frightening, and they are not someone I ever hope to meet again. I live in a sketchy area of a nice part of the city, so while it's not terrible, there are some weirdos around. I've personally never had a problem, but I've had female friends have several close calls. The direct neighborhood I live in is in the dog area, so there is always dog people walking, and I definitely feel safe with my big ass pit bull. The dog park is a fenced in area within a larger park right next to the lake. It's weird, we live in a huge city, but that park gets pitch black at night. There are trees and sheds and other obstacles inside the actual dog park. One night around midnight, I decided to take my dog to the park as usual. My boyfriend was working the closing shift at his restaurant, and the bus stop was on the way of the park, so he decided to meet me there on his way home. As I was walking towards the dog park, I thought I saw the outline of a person inside. I actually could have sworn I did, because I am on constant vigilance for dog presence with a dog-reactive dog. I assumed someone with their dog was inside, so I walked around the park while keeping my eye on the dog park, waiting for them to leave. But no one ever came out, and when I eventually approached the fence, I didn't see anyone or their dog inside. So we entered and played as usual. Anyway, my dog and I are playing fetch, and he's running around doing his thing. I'm standing next to the double-fenced entrance reading the bulletin board, and randomly, my dog stops playing and runs up next to me. He sits quietly at my feet and is staring into the dog park. I didn't notice anything amiss. I thought it was kinda weird, but my dog is weird in general, so I didn't think much about it. After a couple of minutes, my dog goes back to playing and my boyfriend comes up. He'd apparently been trying to call me, but my phone was on silent. Apparently there was a guy dressed completely in black with his hood up standing on the other side of the fence, staring at me. I had no idea that he was there. My boyfriend was walking down the street towards the park and saw all of this. My dog then came up and sat, but actually sat facing the wrong direction. I wasn't even looking at the guy. My boyfriend then said that the guy stared at me for another 30 seconds or so, and then took off down sprinting across the park. What is extra creepy was that there was a police patrol car sitting a couple blocks down. I think it's unsettling. I had no idea the guy was like 3 feet from me. Did my dog's presence deter him? Did I interrupt a drug pickup looking to mug someone in a dark area? Was someone else inside the park the entire time? And what was my dog actually staring at? Did he sense something was up? I don't know. We got the fuck out of there immediately after though. So, unknown person doing weird unknown things? Let's not meet. I was 15, and my brother was 13 at the time we moved into our new home. We had woods behind our home, separated from our yard by just a 4-foot tall fence. Me and my brother went into the woods to adventure, but we never went far enough to where we couldn't see our home anymore. My stepfather, who lived with us, told me and my brother that an old man complained about us leaving trash in the woods. We have never brought trash into the woods. nor did he probably own any of the woods. One day we went deep into the woods, the farthest we had ever been, adventuring as usual. When we no longer saw our home, we looked deep into the woods and saw a shadow behind the tree. The noise we heard next haunts both of our dreams to this day. We heard a loud laugh, that of a clown that sounded straight from the movie It. We ran faster than we ever had and jumped our short fence and told our mother what had happened. She didn't believe us, but to this day, when I get home in the dead of night and the only light is from the porch, which barely illuminates the fence, I swear I feel the presence of being watched as I unlock the door and enter my home. Mysterious clown figure, let's never meet again.